Welcome to today's MX Forum. My name is Jill Chase, and I help lead enterprise investments at Capital G. I want to start by introducing everyone to Shane Evans, MX's new interim CEO and president. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to start by congratulating you on behalf of everyone at Capital G. We are so excited to have you in this new role. Let's start by learning a little bit about your background.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Jill. First of all, thanks for making the trip out. I know that you came out to Utah today, and we so appreciate you making the time to come out and be here with us in Utah. So a little bit about me, originally from the Midwest, so from Kansas City originally, and I know we've got a little friendly banter going, you being a Patriots fan, and for many years having that over me, and now being a Chiefs fan, I got a little bit of the edge, which is awesome. But I'm a Midwesterner at heart. Pretty much grew up in Utah, and I absolutely love Utah and everything about Utah. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, so any chance I get, I'm heading to the hills for mountain biking, hiking, and pretty much anything that allows me to relieve some stress and just get some time outside. And Utah's such a great place to do that in. I went to school here at the University of Utah, and then I've worked for a number of companies that actually were based here. So Global Payments, InMoment, and then most recently before MX, I was at a company called Qualtrics. That was a great ride there. And so that's a little bit about me and my background.
That's awesome. And what brought you to MX?
Great question. So there's a few things that brought me to MX. As I was looking at different opportunities after leaving Qualtrics, I met a few folks, and the people here at MX are what really brought me in. And a little bit about that, I remember one of the last meetings I had with the founders here at MX, I was scheduled to meet with Ryan one day, Ryan Caldwell, our founder. And that day, the co-founder, Brandon DeWitt, had just finished a treatment up at a local hospital for his cancer. And he came wandering into the office and saw us in a conference room and ended up coming in and sitting down. And what was supposed to be a 30-minute meeting turned into a 3-hour discussion on Brandon's battle against cancer. And that was very special for me. It really was what sealed the deal for me. I saw how his fight and battle against cancer had really galvanized the company, and it created this amazing culture where people are able to do incredible things given everything that they've been through in fighting alongside Brandon. The second thing about MX that brought me here is our purpose. And a lot of companies will have mission statements or really fancy words that are up on walls, and it's something that's important, but it's really hard to explain unless you've been here. The people really live and breathe the mission. And I've had so many experiences where we'll have an idea or a new initiative that we want to take on, and you'll have an employee that will jump up and say, we can't do that. It's not in line with our purpose or the mission that we have, which is to empower the world to be financially strong. And so that really is something that galvanizes the company together and drives us to achieve great things. And so that's a second thing. Then the last thing I would say that brought me here is our product. And I think it's rare that you get the 3 Ps, people, purpose, and product all together. And our product is unbelievable. We're in a really unique position in the market. We've got this amazing relationship with financial institutions, banks, credit unions, and we also have this incredible innovation being driven by fintechs. And so we're at the crossroads of this incredible industry. And if we see what's happening right now with financial transformation, it's incredible. And our product is uniquely positioned to help all sorts of organizations take advantage of that and capitalize on that opportunity. And we're just incredibly excited and fortunate about the opportunity that's in front of us right now. Hey, Jill, I'm curious, kind of turning the tables back to you. We've been so impressed with Capital G, the team, the due diligence that your group did. I'm curious, why did your team decide to become part of the MX journey?
Yeah, for sure. At Capital G, we've been watching MX from the sidelines for a number of years, and I think the first time we heard about MX actually was from one of the members of our financial services advisory group at Google. And they mentioned there was this exceptional team out of Utah with this unbelievable product attacking some of the biggest problems in financial services. And that sort of piqued our interest. And actually, you're not the only one who had a 30-minute conversation with Brandon turned into a 3-hour conversation. We had a very similar experience where we were just so captivated by the mission, the product, what you were building, sort of how big the problems you were attacking, and it got us really excited. We spend a ton of time on data infrastructure, and I think see that as sort of a key part of the future. And specifically within financial services, the opportunity is just so massive to create value given how big the industry needs disruption. And so we got really excited about the product and the problem you were solving, and so decided to participate in the Series C in October of 2020, and have been advising and working with you guys ever since.
Awesome. Well, we so appreciate the partnership, and we've got so much value from working with your team. So thank you for becoming part of that journey.
Oh, of course. It's been such a fun ride. What's been your journey at MX so far?
Yeah, it's actually been a crazy ride. So I joined in mid 2019, and I was asked to lead growth at the time, and so got to work with a number of the go-to-market teams out of the gate. And then a few months after that, about 6 months after that, I was asked to take on a role as president. And so basically the easiest way to think about that is any department that touched the customer, I was able to work closely with. And then most recently, I've been able to step into a role as the interim CEO. And so now have the opportunity to work closely with all departments. And I think one of the things that was important that allowed that to occur, early in my career, I learned that you really need to work very collaboratively and cross-functionally across all departments. And even when I arrived in the first role I was here at MX, spent a lot of time getting to know the different departments and the leaders and making sure that we had really good support and alignment as we were trying to go out and build and innovate. And we've really tried to carry that forward as we've continued on in our journey. And so it's been a crazy ride. It's been a ton of fun, and yet still so much potential and opportunity in front of us at this time. So Jill, being at CapG, you guys have an opportunity to see a ton of exciting companies. I'm curious, as you contrast that, why are you so bullish about MX, and more specifically about open finance as an industry?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the thing that stuck out to us originally and at first was sort of this, how massive the market is and how big the opportunity for disruption is within financial services and open finance more broadly. We are undeniably in this age of big data, but what's so hard for companies and consumers is to figure out how to actually get access to this data and make use of it. And it's such a big deal in financial services and fintech because there are so many parties who want access to that data, and there are trillions of transactions that are taking place. And so the volume of the problem is just massive. You have consumers who want to make smart decisions with their money. You have fintechs who want to build completely new products by leveraging access to that data. You have banks and credit unions who want to offer more personalized services to their consumers. And so the problem just becomes really meaty, and figuring out how to make sense of all of the data that exists and get it into the hands of these decision makers is so great. And the hard thing about this whole thing is building the infrastructure that underlies sort of these data highways. And that's what we saw MX was building, and that's what got us so excited. We actually got the chance to vet some of the technology that you all were building with some of our engineers at Google. And the reaction and feedback from that process gave us incredibly high conviction that what you're building at MX is incredibly special and also has the potential to fundamentally change the future of open finance. And that's what got us to really lean in hard with our most recent investment, and what gets us so excited to watch what you and the team will accomplish over the next decade and beyond.
Awesome. That gets me excited.
Yeah,
Hearing you talk about it, it gets me
go.
excited. So that's great.
That's the 50,000 foot view, though. You're sort of in the trenches. You're talking to customers. Who is MX, and what is the problem that you're trying to solve for the market?
Yeah, great question. So a couple things. You mentioned it. It's a very complex ecosystem that we're in right now. And as we've tried to get our focus and really hone in on who we are, it's been a good exercise for us to go through as a company. And we really feel like we found this new sense of clarity on where we can really help move the industry forward, in a manner of speaking. So who are we? We are an open finance company, put in its simplest form. And what that means is we help organizations connect and verify financial data. And so as you think about what that looks like, there's really three different parties that play in the ecosystem, or three different stakeholders that we are focused on. The first one is consumers. So it could be individuals or it could be businesses, because we do a lot of work in B2B. The second group or stakeholders would be data providers that historically have been more financial institutions, credit unions, banks, but even some of the fintechs are now becoming data providers with the amount of the customer base that they're building and the amount of data they have access to. And then you have data recipients, which again, historically have been more fintechs or those parties that are trying to get access to the data. So now that we've talked about the different audiences that we think about and service, let's talk about the problems that they're facing. So from the consumer perspective, roughly 25% of the US population doesn't have enough data in their credit file to get access to capital. They're also looking for this holistic view of what their financial picture looks like and struggling to make sense of it. If we think about the data providers, and the big problem they're dealing with is really threefold. They've got an institution that has a legacy mindset on how things get done inside of their four walls. They've also got massive technical challenges where a lot of their technical infrastructure is designed to be closed and not open. And so it makes it really hard for them to open that up and innovate. And then the last area is really regulatory. Like these data providers in most cases are very saddled with a lot of regulatory tape they have to work through in order to really be able to innovate. And I can't tell you how many people we've talked to that want to go faster and yet are really limited by those three areas within their business. And then we get to the last group again in data recipients. And these are traditional fintech players as well as organizations that are trying to find a new way to reimagine what their money movement process might look like. And so for these groups, the big problem that they're dealing with is that more than 70% of them don't culturally see eye to eye with their bank partners. And so they want to work with them, but there's a challenge in how they might engage and interact with one another. We call it a value exchange, how they can trust each other and create this really healthy working relationship. In addition, if you look at the reliability of a lot of these apps, because they don't have that modern infrastructure that's needed, when they even connect to a financial institution, the connect rate tends to be much lower. In some cases, it's only 50% of the time that those apps are actually connecting successfully. And so that provides a really poor user experience that reflects poorly on both, in this case, a data recipient as well as the data provider that they might be partnering with to power that solution. So as you think about the market opportunity, those are the three different segments or audiences that we think about: consumers, data providers, and data recipients. And we think that open finance is making these winning scenarios really possible.
Yeah.
And our approach is one where when we think about a solution that we're going to bring to market or a new business model, we're trying to factor in all three parties and determine how can we create a win-win-win scenario that will allow each group to feel like they're incentivized and they can have the trust necessary to succeed with the other players that are part of that ever-changing landscape that's moving very rapidly.
Yeah. No, I love that framing. And, at Capital G, we talk a lot about sort of understanding the why now behind our investments and what gets us excited. And is there some type of change in the market that makes these opportunities even larger than before? And I think to your point, sort of where we're moving with open finance and sort of having these three very siloed groups really sets MX up with a massive opportunity to come in and sort of be the center of all of that. So we're super excited. I love that framing. Curious, what other trends are you seeing in the market and as it sort of unfolds?
Yeah, so again, one of the things we said we talk about today are the trends. And what I want to do is, there's been so much great content created on fintech trends for the upcoming year. It's all over the place and everyone can get access to and read it. We actually want to put the lens or the frame around this of open finance. And then again, let's go back to the segments that we were just talking about. So if we think about that again, starting with consumers, we ran a survey recently. We found that 90% of people surveyed felt like it would be valuable to see their finances in one place. Yeah. Almost every person wants access to that. That's a big trend that we're starting to see more and more, that organizations are realizing it's not enough for me just to provide one service, that the consumer's looking for a more holistic experience. And yet, despite that, only 40% of consumers said they could actually make that happen or do that in a way that is meaningful for them. So I think that's a big trend for consumers that we're starting to see. Another trend we're seeing from a consumer's perspective is that more than 52% want personalized offers. So I want to know what's relevant to me versus just a generic offer coming out. And then finally, and this isn't a big surprise, but they're looking for more of a frictionless experience with whichever provider they're interacting with. It could be a bank, could be a credit union, it could be a retailer. But they really want to have that frictionless engagement with the different organizations they're coming into contact with. From a data provider perspective, the trends that we're seeing is that only 21% of banks say their systems are agile enough to actually keep up with open finance. And so there's a big obstacle here for data providers to really embrace this open world and be able to innovate. in an effective fashion. Another trend we're seeing is that they're trying to update their risk models so that they can accurately assess risk and decide which customers should get access to certain types of products or solutions that they offer. A lot of their models they're finding not as relevant today as they even were 6 months ago. And so there's a big opportunity to improve in that regard. And then a massive trend is they're trying to identify new profit streams or new revenue models that will help supplement where they're heading in the future, which is exciting because even though they're challenged, they see the need, and so they're desperately trying to get there. And it's always exciting for us. We get to sit down with the team and they start to realize the potential, and we usually have to dial it back and help them realize we've got some basic homework, some foundational work that needs to take place before we can get to some of these exciting things that are down the track. So for the third area, data recipients, the trends we're seeing for the upcoming year are, first of all, just the massive influx of investment into the industry. It's almost triple what it has been in years past. Last year we set a record where there was more than 130 billion pouring into fintech to drive innovation. So now you got all this capital that is there and available and all these great ideas and this innovation. One of the main reasons that fintechs are failing is because they can't connect to the data. And so the ability to consistently, securely, and reliably connect to the data is one of those key trends that we're seeing as being so paramount for the success of these fintech organizations. And then the third trend that we're seeing is not just on connecting, but being able to do something with that data. And I'll give you a quick example. We have one fintech partner today that initially their use case was just to connect to an account to authorize, is this person actually who they say they are? Now they're going deeper to drive the approval rate for loans by verifying a single attribute in that data of rental income and using that as a way to bolster that individual's creditworthiness to improve the approval rate of those loans. And so we're seeing this really cool use case and a trend of doing more with verifying of individual data attributes within all of those different elements that would exist for an individual consumer. So those are some of the trends for consumers, what we're calling data providers and data recipients.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, no, those trends make a ton of sense. And, it's insane how much capital is going into the market to solve these problems. It's exciting. We see it every day. But those are a lot of challenges, a lot of problems to solve. How does MX think about helping organizations solve some of these problems?
We do this by providing the industry's most secure and reliable open finance APIs. And in short, MX helps in 3 critical ways. So let's talk about those for just a moment. The first way is we connect and verify accounts. We have a partner today that does lending for their consumers who uses our modern data aggregation to speed up the loan approval process that's gone from what used to take 2 weeks to a matter of minutes. It used to be that you had to submit all this paperwork and do all this work, and we've been able to streamline that so it happens through that connection, that verification process immediately.
I can tell you when I was applying for a loan when we were trying to buy a house, I experienced this firsthand, and I thought to myself, why am I filling out all of these forms and emailing a bunch of institutions and everything and trying to pull this all together? Why is there not an easier way? And so that makes a ton of sense and really resonates.
Yeah, great. So that's again where that connection and being able to verify that makes that possible. The second critical way in which we're helping to drive innovation is really through enhancing transactional data. And so another one of our partners uses our categorized data enhancement to provide recommendations on credit card spending to maximize travel rewards. So pretty simple use case, but they needed help building a mobile app that would optimize all those rewards points and give you guidance on how to best go and use those. And so that's another example of where data enhancement has helped us really drive innovation through a use of a fintech application or use case.
So you're saying that instead of just having a string of serial numbers show up and me try to figure out exactly what that transaction was, I could actually know immediately what that is, and then my bank or whatever it is could then take the next step and make recommendations based on that information?
Spot on.
It's a game changer. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And so instead of seeing that cryptic string of characters, you actually know okay, where did I spend this money?
Yep, Starbucks probably, yeah.
Yeah, probably. Very common one. So great example. And then the third critical area where we help organizations is on helping to manage customer financial data access. We have a bank partner that we're working with that recently launched their open finance platform to enable tokenized data sharing and improve the digital experience for their customers. And this allowed them to provide more modern experiences to their consumers for whatever app that individual consumer wanted to use.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. So it seems like sort of across these three big pillars, the thing that's underlying it is this infrastructure and the piping that allows you to sort of take data from all of the different stakeholders, give people access to it and enhance it so that people can make sense of it. Seems like, that's a really hard technical problem to solve. And you guys have done a tremendous, at least according to customer feedback we did during our diligence process, you guys have done a tremendous job with that. I think you mentioned something about sort of this modern approach to connecting and verifying. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that is and why it's so important?
Yeah, you bet. In fact, I think most consumers don't even realize that they've actually given access to their financial bank accounts by connecting to a fintech app.
Yeah.
And so one of the efforts that we've been focused on heavily is on driving what we're calling modern connectivity, which means we work closely with data providers to help secure that authenticated access. And so you think of like a direct tokenized approach. And what that means, it's a fancy way for saying that I don't have to provide my user credentials out into the system. You actually get a token and you validate who you are, and then that token is saved, and it provides that direct and reliable access. And that is really important because now, instead of you having to worry about whether or not that's going to fail or work, with that direct sanctionized access, it allows for us to provide a much more reliable experience to the individual consumer. And it helps both the data recipient and the data provider, because now there's that consented access that allows them to have that ongoing relationship, as opposed to what historically has been more of a scraped connection that's not been as reliable as we need it to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge deal. Like, that's fundamentally different in approach from a technology perspective than what's happened historically. And I think it's easy to see, to your point, all of the downstream impacts that can have for the consumer, for fintechs, for banks. Just having sort of this be in the center of open finance is awesome and amazing. So huge congrats.
Thank you.
All right, well, I mean, we've gone through trends, we've gone through the market, we've gone through what MX does. The next question is, what's on the horizon? What's next? What are you guys building?
There's a lot of different ideas and thoughts on where the market is going to be. And obviously we've got our own point of view and perspective on that. The one big thing I think we can all agree upon is that consumers' needs and the requirements they have are changing at an accelerated and exponential rate, what they're looking for. And I think that digital transformation is something that was a nice to have and has now become an absolute necessity. So when it comes to financial services, consumers are expecting that same intelligent, personalized, and instant experience that they're going to get everywhere else. And the financial ecosystem is facing increasing pressure to keep up. So when it comes to opening up an account or applying for a loan, they're looking for that to happen in seconds, not in days. They also don't want to have to come into a physical retail location, whether it's a data provider or a data recipient. And so where we see the market heading is we've got a lot of work to do on the data infrastructure, and that's where we're investing a ton of our resource and time with both data recipients and data providers, in hopes that that will make the consumer experience incredibly frictionless and easy. And yet beyond that, if we can get the foundation right, the market opportunity is tremendous for all parties involved. And so we start thinking about, you're hearing a lot of topics and trends around banking as a service, and what does that mean? And what the opportunity is that every organization has the ability to participate in reimagining what their financial experience could look like. And we're seeing this every day right now. Like, there's headlines popping up of where retailer or automotive player ABC is partnering with a new player to redesign how their entire financial service or experience is currently unfolding. And so that's where those individual services become very hot, and it's a great opportunity to recreate or reimagine what that could look like. And as time goes on, we believe that that embedded experience for financial services will become the status quo. Yeah. Where now, wherever I go, whatever interaction I'm in, I no longer have to go outside of that experience to be able to close the loop or to be able to finish that process around any type of money movement or money payment or any type of authentication. Yeah. So that's where we see the future going, but coming back, again, we're hyper-focused on this current arena, which is really helping all the parties involved get the infrastructure right, this integration layer that will allow for a lot of this innovation to unfold and open up and unlock a lot of other potential out in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I got goosebumps as you were talking. It's so easy to imagine, like, here are all the ways that the world could fundamentally change over the next 10 years as it relates to embedded finance and all of these applications becoming fintechs themselves. But to your point, it's a little bit of sort of a crawl, walk, run situation. Like you need to be able to have that infrastructure rock solid before you then move into all of the downstream impacts it can have throughout the sort of the rest of the industry. So it's awesome. What you guys are doing is amazing. We're pumped about it. We're excited to see what happens over the next decade. And thanks for giving us a little peek into the future.
So Jill, we've talked about the challenges in the industry. We've talked about some of the trends. We've talked about the vision of where we see the market heading. Again, really appreciate you making the time to come out. Let's finish with a little lightning round if we could.
Okay.
So if we think about things that people should either stop or start doing.
Okay.
And I mean, you guys at Capital G have a view and a perspective. You look at a lot of companies. So as you think about some of those early stage companies, what would you say to them on things they should start doing and things they should potentially think about stopping?
Yeah, all right, lightning round, I like it. I think, the first thing that comes to mind is the past few weeks have seen quite a bit of market volatility and certainly seems like we're sort of ushering in a new state of the market than has been for the previous really 2 years and beyond. And I think, related to that context, I guess my answer would be make sure to start thinking about sort of building the foundation for the company and the growth that you're seeing and thinking about how to sort of efficiently build structures into your business such that you're not sort of prioritizing growth above all else, given we're sort of entering this new phase of the market.
Yeah, that's good, and it's timely. I think a lot of companies are struggling right now to figure out how do we think about the future, and it's never a bad thing to be thinking about like sustained growth that is very full of substance.
Totally, it's an exciting and new time, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
All right, back at you. As you think about sort of the market and your customers, what would you advise folks to either start doing or stop doing?
Wow. So we talked about a lot of different audiences that we have as we think about that, but I think a few things that would apply across the board. So let's start first with the easy one, things they should start doing, because stopping is really hard to do things. So I think something to be really helpful is to start thinking more about the experiences that their customers are in. And I'm always blown away when I go out and actually treat myself as a customer to our company and experience everything firsthand. And so I would encourage folks attending today to start putting themselves into the shoes of their customers and going through those experiences firsthand. And I think that help them gain a new perspective on what their customers are going through. And as far as things that people should stop doing, there's a laundry list of things that I think that we need to make of things that would help and then stay committed to that. And especially as we think about open finance, we're really focused on how we can help provide more direct and sanctioned access. And so helping to drive that forward is going to require a new mindset. So almost kind of an oxymoron of like yes and no. Stop thinking as we have in the past. Challenge the status quo, challenge the different paradigms that you might have. So stop living as you have in the past and opening up your mind to new thinking, I think would be a really good opportunity for a lot of folks to engage in.
Yeah, almost like start taking ownership over the data that you're generating every day with every transaction that you make. Think about how you want that data used and make sure it's being connected in a safe, reliable way, things like that.
That was fun. I appreciate always your perspective and always great to spend time with you. And I just want to say thank you again for making the time to come out and spend a few minutes with us today and sharing your thoughts with those that had the opportunity to attend. So really appreciate you making the time.
No, awesome. Thank you so much for the time. This was, as per usual, so much fun to chat with you about the industry, the market, MX, the future, everything. So thank you so much for the time, and thank you guys all for watching.